True Gnosis is the abandonment and foregoing of all forms of ego. True Gnosis is the foregoing of all ego. What I particularly mean by that is, if you're trying to reach certain stages of enlightenment or go through various processes of spirituality to become one with your higher self, a reoccurring theme that I talk about in most of my videos is letting go of a majority of the ego and not letting that dictate your path of spirituality or where you're going. So when a lot of people become conscious or enlightened, what they're still trying to do is maintain a separate identity or remain an individual, because they still don't see themselves as part of the greater whole. You know, they still want to be a master in some topic or arena of what they consider conscious information, and thus use that to continue perpetuating a reason, you know, for their existence, or why people should look upon them or go to them for information. And that's not the proper, you know, avenue that anyone wants to take, you know, going on any form of enlightenment, because it will eventually be, you know, null and void, you know, to be able to obtain that, you know, those various stages, if you still are dealing with any form of the ego. So when you read the Gospel of Thomas, which is one of the early Gnostic texts found in Nag Hammadi, Egypt, and I believe 1945, the Gospel of Thomas is basically a conglomeration of what they say are the true teachings of Christ, or what the Bible defines as Jesus. And this has nothing to do with the actual Jesus that's taught about in the Bible. You know, this could have been anyone from a sage to any type of individual in the past with some form of Christ consciousness. But as you eventually, you know, move on in your process of enlightenment, you know, you begin to know that there was no historical figure by, you know, the attributes of Jesus that Christianity describes. But anyway, what this individual said is, you know, when the prophets came unto him, he said, well, you know, teacher, how should we know that, you know, who will be able to enter heaven, or when we're ready for heaven? And not heaven per se as somewhere up in the sky on top of the clouds, you know, sitting around with wings, but the concept of heaven that exists in the mind when one does become enlightened or growing consciousness. So this individual said to the disciples, those that enter into the kingdom of heaven will be like infants unto me. And what that specifically means is that you have to go back to a state to where there was little to no ego, and that you were open and inspired, you know, to go out and gain any type of inspiration, knowledge, or just the mere fact of knowing. You see, most of us, as we get older, we get into the process of, we want to become the intelligentsia or the master in one core concept, you know, of spirituality, and we don't want to venture outside of that. And the reason we don't want to venture outside of that is because that would be a conflict with the ego, which is the false self, and knowing that, okay, I have to go back into a stage of not knowing and have to go back to asking questions, you know, and being a student instead of being the misconceived teacher I thought I was, or the master of a certain topic. And this is what a lot of people are stuck in. They become, you know, focused on one core concept of spirituality, whether it be, you know, the Hindu system, you know, whether it be interpreting the Bible for its esoteric meaning, you know, or just basically any of the, you know, various avenues of consciousness one can take. But what you're supposed to be doing is, you're supposed to go to, you know, any of those concepts. You're supposed to study them, you know, to a certain extent, you know, to where you can take that information and apply it into some kind of form for you to grow into enlightenment. But you're not supposed to stay stuck in that for 30, 40, 50 years just because your ego is telling you, well, since I know this, I'm just going to stick with this and not study anything else. And this is especially important when you study history, you know, of mythology, religion. You see that you can't accredit, you know, any type of all-knowing to one system, of spirituality, being that everything is just a conglomeration of one another, and basically each religion kind of picked apart bits and pieces it wanted to use from, ancient, belief systems, mythologies, earlier concepts from earlier civilizations. You can see that, there are bits and pieces of everything all put in one melting pot. And the only thing we need to be doing at this point is trying to decipher that and seeing what's truth from fact. And this is why I'm saying that, the foregoing of a majority of the ego, and I'm saying the majority of the ego because, while we're still trapped into a physical body and we have to be here growing in enlightenment, until we're able to break free, of ourselves, there's still some form of ego you're going to have to assume, whether you like it or not. Just the mere fact of, us having to sustain the physical body is a form of ego. There's no way you can be as spiritual as you want, but, if the body gets hungry, or if the body has a specific need, it needs you to pay attention to, it's going to let you know, and it's going to break you off the track, of any certain path you're on, or enlightenment. So there's always going to be a minimal amount of ego we're going to have to deal with, but that still ties into the whole, mythology of Horus and Set, the biblical concept of, Jesus and Satan. You always have to battle the alter ego, but the core concept is not to let it get the best of you. So back to the Gospel of Thomas, when it says, those who are like infants will be the ones to enter into heaven. Those that forego any type of ego, go to a stage of wanting to know, awakening that kundalini energy, which allows you, to grow in consciousness. That's what that specifically is talking about. Because when you look at infants, when you look at, little children to a certain age, they don't really have any form of ego. They don't see themselves as separate or give themselves an identity as we do as we grow in age, and become indoctrinated, into religion, politics, societal views, or what we think people want us to be, which is just egotistical in the biggest form, of all. But when you look at children, they don't, it's not until we teach them that, oh, you're a separate person, be proud of who you are, look out for yourself, all this I and self terminologies, that's when the ego begins to form. And it's kind of like a contradiction, because it's like, if we're supposed to grow in spirituality and we're being taught these things by our parents, it's almost like they're setting us up for failure. But the big thing with that is that you can't blame a lot of individuals, because like I said, some people, most of us have been indoctrinated, and brainwashed, as we grew in age. But it's up to you, or your spiritual contract that you made prior to incarnating into a physical body, to realize that, hey, it's time to wake up, it's time to break free of these, so-called norms and societal views, and time to, regain the Gnosis that my soul, once had. So basically that was my message for today. I'm not going to try to beat a dead horse. I'm sure it's going to be some more ideas that comes to me after I turn this video off. But I just wanted to kind of share that this morning, to not become stuck in one specific realm of ideology or thought, which is going to kind of not do any justice to you in the end. Because like I said, all of the different, there's a guy by the name of Professor James Smalls that I like to watch on YouTube, and one of the most, best comments he ever said was that, all of the systems from Christianity, Judaism, Islam, there are only mere fragments of a greater ideology that once existed, but we lost due to our spiritual fall and being indoctrinated. So that's how you have to go about in the world. You have to look at everything as just a piece or a fragment of a greater knowledge, and study all things. Don't become isolated in one form of thought. I study everything from melanin to the Hindu system to the esoteric meaning of the Bible, you know, to reading things about sexual alchemy. I don't stay stuck in one form of thought. And I've actually seen that I've grown in enlightenment and feel more free by doing that. Because once you do become stuck in one form of thought, you have to specifically follow those rules or laws that govern that body of thought. You know, such as Christianity. Most people are not going to, you know, extend outside of that and try to gain any additional gnosis, because one of the things the Bible tells you is that, oh, this stuff is pagan, this stuff is, you know, demonistic, so you shouldn't venture outside of anything in the Bible. When these people don't know that the Bible is nothing but a plagiarized form of ancient sun worship for one, and ancient, you know, mythologies basically. But kind of take that with you and let us all grow in consciousness, you know, and finally be free of any type of ego. Peace.